In Movies and Money, theater stocks including AMC, Cinemark, and IMAX are back in focus as Godzilla vs. Kong is playing on the big screen, and that film is attracting a huge audience. Here's a quick look at the film.
It's Godzilla.
Let's bring in film critic Erik Childress now for the details. Hello, Erik.
Hi, Angie.
Godzilla vs. Kong arrived in theaters in a big way this past week. Can you break down the magnitude of these numbers?
Absolutely, Angie. And what was certainly a boost to the struggling theater industry, Godzilla vs. Kong added a necessary jolt and, more importantly, a bit of hope to those still concerned if theaters can come back to the manner in which they have been accustomed. But let's start with the immediate good news, in that Warner Brothers' Godzilla vs. Kong grossed $48 million in the 5-day stretch from last Wednesday through Easter Day. Now, that is more than Wonder Woman 1984 had made in its entire theatrical run, and that was the beginning of the concurrent theatrical and HBO Max streaming plan that Godzilla vs. Kong is also performing under. And we are clearly seeing the progress of not just theaters reopening in major markets, but also the progression of people receiving the vaccine and feeling safer to go out and enjoy movies on a big screen again. Now, personally, I would love to see a breakdown of attendance of the vaccinated versus non-vaccinated, but regardless, we are still talking about theaters operating in most cases at less than 50% or even 25% capacity, so that only makes the numbers even more impressive, and it is just nice to think about the immediate prospect of talking about a $100 million grossing film again.
It is also being reported that Godzilla vs. Kong had the biggest audience for HBO Max to date. What can you tell us about those numbers, Erik?
About as much as they want us to know, Angie. Now, Samba TV, which is a third-party rating streaming firm, says that 3.6 million households turned on Godzilla vs. Kong in its first 5 days. Now, the key being the words turned on, because that number registers anyone who turned it on for just 5 minutes. So basically, this is just another example of what I call bird boxing, which is when we get told how many people may have watched something on a streaming service without providing any definitive numbers. Now, you may have noticed that we have not done a whole lot of commentary on how Disney's Premier Access section of Disney Plus has done with Raya and the Last Dragon, or how The Little Things or even Tom and Jerry have done on HBO Max. And it's simply because there's not exactly been transparency on the numbers. Plus, it can also be a more difficult metric to use against the performance of any single movie, given that subscriptions can go month to month and be canceled on a whim. It's much different than measuring the cost of a single ticket price. It is actually one aspect of the theatrical part of the industry that studios don't really miss, and that is analysts speaking truth to power and how their sales measure up for their theater splits and investor returns.
Netflix is getting a lot of buzz for that huge investment in the director of the film Knives Out. What can you tell us?
They sure did, Angie. It had already been announced that Rian Johnson was reteaming with Daniel Craig to bring his Knives Out detective Benoit Blanc back for a sequel and even a series of films. Well, Netflix has now acquired the rights to distribute the next 2 films for a cost of $450 million. Now, this was major news last week, and great news for all the fans of the original film, which, after making $165 million domestically and over $300 million worldwide, became one of the most profitable films ever distributed by Lionsgate, up there with chapters of The Hunger Games, Twilight, La La Land, and Wonder. And now Netflix has a bona fide event franchise on its docket, with Part 2 already slated to begin filming June 28th. Now, with both Knives Out and Kenneth Branagh spinning his take on Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot and Murder of the Orient Express and The Delayed Death on the Nile, I thought the whodunit was about to come back into the mainstream in a big way. Now, a number like that is surely going to give people the incentive to start crafting their own big ensemble mysteries very soon.
Well, thanks for keeping us up to date, Erik.
Thank you, Angie.
More Business First AM. Check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And go to businessfirstam.com for where to see our show on TV.